Сайн байцгаана уу хүн үзэгчдээ. Өнөөдөр манай de facto нэвтрүүлгийн зочноор Zorig сан Америкт бүртгэлтэй байгууллагын ерөнхийлөгч ноён Уолтер Женкинс оролцож байна.
Уолтер Женкинс. Уолтер нь Америк нэгдсэн улсын Колорадо мужид амьдардаг ба тус улсын батлан хамгаалах яамны атомын энергийн комисс болон эрчим хүчний яамнаас ажлын гараагаа эхэлжээ. Тэрээр Америк нэгдсэн улсын засгийн газар болон хувийн хэвшлийн компаниудад инженерийн үйлчилгээ үзүүлэх зөвлөх мөн бизнес эрхлэгч юм. Мэриландын их сургууль болон Жорж Вашингтоны их сургуулийг тус дүүргэсэн. Сүүлийн 14 жилийн турш Jenkins нь Монголын залууст зориулсан манлайллын сургалт хөтөлбөрүүдийг санаачлан санхүүжүүлж байгаа юм а.
Good evening, Walt.
Good evening.
You have been coming to this country many years. I remember I met you 17 years ago in Colorado, Denver. And since that almost so many years you are involved with Mongolia, engaged with Mongolia. You're doing a wonderful job. Please tell us about your organizations.
I'm currently president of the Board of Trustees of Zurich Foundation US, which is an organization that supports the Zurich Foundation here in Mongolia, in which we're really focusing a great deal of our efforts on educational programs for young Mongolians. I'm also now chairman of the board of the Arts Council of Mongolia US, and I'm now chairman of the board of the American University of Mongolia, which I took over after Pete Morrow passed away last August. I'm trying to carry on some of his plans and wishes. But Zorig Foundation is really where I focus most of my time and energy and money. And that's where I've been working since 2001 when I first met Oyun, when I was here working on a documentary film with a friend. And we've done a tremendous amount of educational programs over that period of time. And if you want, I can go into a few of those.
Yes. What was that documentary you were doing in Mongolia in 2001?
Well, I came here with a very, very close friend of mine who'd been here a year or two earlier doing some filming for a friend of his who was a doctor with Sloan Kettering. He'd come here doing some surgery, and he wanted it filmed. And he came back. My friend came back to the States and said, "Walt, I've been to this country, Mongolia, and it's a wonderful place, and you need to see it." And I said, "Well, okay, what do we do?" And he says, "Well, we'll make a film."
Okay.
And so I put up some money. So he was a documentary filmmaker. I put up some money so we could come here, and I said, "Well, what's the film going to be?" And he said, "Well, we're working on two films. One was on women artists of Mongolia. That's how I got associated with the predecessor of the Arts Council, when Ariuna was the program manager at Soros Foundation."
Yes.
And we were doing one, we were gathering footage because he was working on one for street children of the world. And if you remember back in the early 2000s, there were probably 5,000 children on the streets here, living in the sewers, among other things. And so we were gathering footage on that. Unfortunately, within 2 years, he was killed down in Guatemala gathering some more footage for the street children film. And I came back and took some of the film that we had on women artists and made a small short feature in memoriam to him, and I gave it to the Arts Council. But we never really followed through with anything else because I wasn't a filmmaker. That wasn't really where my interests were.
Let's talk about this, you said youth education, in particular through Zurich Foundation, you guys doing very well about the youth leadership. You have permanent courses, you have many programs. Please tell us about that.
Okay. Actually, when I first came here in 2001, I met Oyun, who's the head of the foundation, because somebody had told me that I could send a young Mongolian to college for a year at, say, National University of Mongolia for like $300 back then. And that many of these countryside students didn't have the wherewithal to go to college. And so I started giving out some money to the people I was working with to find some young, deserving students. And then they mentioned that the Zorig Foundation had a nonprofit in the States, and if I gave the money through there, I could get a tax deduction and my money would go further. So I started a scholarship program. I met Oyun, started a scholarship program at Zorig Foundation in 2001. And I realized after a couple of years of just giving out money for scholarships that these young students were going to graduate, but they really didn't know much. Back in the early 2000s, you may recall, this was a very closed society. There were, you know, if somebody wanted to get on the internet, they went to an internet cafe, you know, and there were maybe 2 channels on TV. And so they didn't know a lot about the outside world, and young people graduated from college really didn't have a real broad worldview. And I thought maybe I needed to do something more and put together a program at Zorig Foundation that would help give them a jump start to their career by teaching leadership skills, teaching management skills, and then broadening their horizons by letting them learn a little bit about a lot of things, issues, whether they were international issues or issues in their own community. I really wanted to try to help these young people have a better sense of what their role is in the community and what they could accomplish by starting to do things in the community. So in addition to leadership training, we really tried to focus on community service type activities along the lines of what, say, Rotary Club does. And in those days, there was only one Rotary Club here, as you'll recall, because you helped start it. And so I wanted them to get a sense of what they could accomplish as young Mongolians in their community and how much they can play a role in the success of democracy. Because, you know, that is the mission and goal of Zorig Foundation, is to promote democracy and free market economy in Mongolia.
You have been doing that already for more than 15 years.
We just finished our 14th class,
Wow,
14th
okay.
class, and we'll be starting class 15 in the fall. For
14th
now that's for
class.
YLP, our Young Leadership Program.
Okay, please tell us about the class. Who can go? Who are there? How many of them?
Yeah.
How long it will be?
Okay, it's for young college graduates, Mongolian college graduates who are between 22 and 25 years of age. And we try to do classes of no larger than 21 to 22 people. And it's an 8-month program where they meet at least once a week for learning sessions in the evening at Zorig Foundation. And then we try to do some experiential type activities where they'll go out and into the community. We've taken them to where the water gets purified. We've taken them to the power plants. We've taken them to meet business, especially in the early days, because they didn't know much about being an entrepreneur. We'd have them meet some small business owners and talk to them about what they went through in starting their business. And so we want to do some hands-on things, not just getting lectures at Zorig Foundation.
Exactly. It's almost kind of vocational training. You know.
In some fashion, that's true.
The children, young college graduates, learning to use their knowledge somehow or to apply it for certain purposes. Any interesting story about those graduates?
Well, you know, we have almost 300 graduates through the years. Many of them are now in some pretty good positions in the community. I have a number of them that are working for Rio Tinto down at OT. But we have them in lots of different walks of life. When we do the interviews in the fall and put together a team for that year, we try to get a mix of different people so they can also learn from each other. So we don't want, say, all accountants in there, and we don't want all doctors in there. We want a mix, and they'll learn from each other as well as the people that we have come teach. And we also want to make it relevant to what's going on in the country at that time. In the early days when the negotiations for the OT agreement with the government were going on, we'd have some government people come and talk in some of the sessions, and we'd have some OT people come and Rio people come and talk about what the issues were. So we try to make it relevant to what the issues are going on at that time. We also spend a lot of time letting them learn about the social issues in the community. We'd go and visit orphanages, we'd go and visit like the school for the deaf, just let them get a sense of what social issues are going on in the community, because probably the hallmark of the year is when we divide them into teams, 3 teams usually for 21 students or participants, and we have them compete for community service projects, and we'd give out prize money at the end. We'd do a judging at the end. They'd make a presentation at towards the end of the year, and we'd bring in people to do judging, and then we'd give out prize money to the winning team.
8-month program is during the academic year, right?
Right. It starts in September. The end of September, we do the selection, and then we graduate the end of May, early June.
Is it many applicants coming usually?
Now we're getting. I think we had 240 applicants last year for 21 slots.
So 10
yeah,
to
so we got a
1.
lot. Yeah, we got a lot of applicants now. It's very, very popular.
Well, in fact, you keep changing already. You have changed already 300 young people's life, the way they think about life, leadership, as you said, community services. So let's look at now. Let's try to make certain conclusion on. What's your observations in this country, working through all these courses, having graduated 300 young people? What is in general your observation about education, about the mentality of young people in this country?
I've seen a lot of changes in the 16 years that I've been coming here, and I've watched the young people that we interview each year. I've watched them change. When they come in now, they already have a lot more information. They're a lot more sophisticated now than they were in the early 2000s. Partly, I think, because there's so much more information coming in from the outside world than there used to be. So they're getting an opportunity to learn at an early age a lot of things that years ago that they didn't get, and so it makes it more difficult for us actually, because I have to continue to hope that we're going to be relevant and give them new information and new capabilities that they don't already have. I'm very, very impressed. I'm very, very excited about how the Mongolian youth these days have become so worldly, if you will, compared to what they used to be. Education is still an issue here. Matter of fact, I read what you wrote a few weeks ago about the quantity of educational institutions here as opposed to quality. We have too many colleges and universities here that aren't necessarily able to do the best job that could be done. But I'm passionate about how successful our young Mongolians are going to be and are at this point. The changes have been wonderful. For example, in addition to our Young Leadership program, I also have an environmental fellowship program at Zurich Foundation that we spun off from YLP about 9 years ago now. And that got started because one of our graduates, a young woman, came to me and said, I have all these friends that are worried about the environment, and can't we do something similar to YLP for people who are interested in environmental issues? And so 8 years ago we started an environmental fellowship program, which is along the same lines as the Young Leadership program. except that many of our sessions are focusing on environmental issues here in the community. And we have a few hundred graduates of our EFP, our Environmental Fellowship Program now.
Okay.
And
What
but
is
this
that
was
about?
started.
How
This
many
was started.
students? How long?
We use the same format. We have 20 to 22 students that are participants in the program each year. We just had our graduation for both EFP and YLP last Friday night. We've had some really wonderful young people who really are out there trying to do something. Matter of fact, the young lady, Onan, who helped start EFP, this winter when the pollution was so bad here, she started a Facebook campaign to raise money to buy air purifiers to put in the children's wings of the hospitals here locally. And she was very successful. She was trying to raise enough to put 100 air purifiers in the local hospital children's wings. And I think they got about 70 some, I believe, but it was all raised on the internet.
Air purifier, what? Is it something inside of the room?
It was an electric machine that
purifies
the air and
the
lowers the pollution within that section of the hospital where the children are.
Wow. So you have this leadership program, environment program, each 21, each
the same
8
age
month.
Right.
Wow. And this 300 does include this one or not?
No, it's more.
More.
Yeah.
How long you run this environmental program?
I think it's been going on now 8 years. I'd have to go ask. I've been here doing so many things I lose track of time, I have to admit. But it's been going on for some time yet. It's been very successful. And at the time that she suggested we do this, I said, well, you know, I'm kind of stretched on money right now, and you know, I don't know that I want to start another program, but I like your idea. She said, well, I'll go find money. And she did. She went to Newcom. Byam Saihan was president of Newcom at the time. She went to Byam and asked him, and he said, sure, we'll support that. So we got it started with Newcom money. And each year we're always out looking. Now it's supported by Haas Bank partly, and sometimes by me. Each year we have to look to see where the funding's coming from. But Haas Bank has been a major supporter of our environmental fellowship program for some time now, and we really appreciate that.
Wow. Now let's talk a bit about the corporate social responsibility, which is a big subject in the U.S. and almost all companies try to be responsible. Here in Mongolia, when you go around and raising funds, what are the major issues you face?
Well, right now the economy is probably the elephant in the room that's holding back the support that we'd like to get. For mid-sized companies and smaller companies, the fact that there's no tax deduction for a business to donate money to NGOs negatively affects our ability to get people interested in giving money. It takes a large corporation that's willing to take it out of profit to do that. One was my friend Pete Morrow, when he was alive, when he was CEO of Han Bank, he believed very strongly in corporate social responsibility, and they created their Han Bank Foundation there at Han Bank, and he was a tremendous supporter of a lot of the activities that we want to do at Zurich Foundation. So every time I'd come up with a new idea, I'd go and talk with Pete and say, okay, Pete, I'll put up half the money for this program that I've explained to him about, if you'll put up half. And he was always very, very supportive of doing that, because he believed that Han Bank had a responsibility, especially because they have branches throughout the country, that they needed to be locally involved and that people needed to know they were locally involved.
Peter Morrow did a lot. On this issue, I would like to have two kind of issues I would like to discuss, because it's important for every company, every family, I think, in the country, where people with more surplus could, give a small portion of that surplus to community services like this, or to making stronger, better youth. First, from profit, if it is given, it should be tax deducted, which is not the case in Mongolia.
Right.
First. Second, when you work as foundations, have you been having problems with tax authorities?
Not particularly with the foundations that I'm working with. Zorig Foundation has been very scrupulous about how they follow whatever the rules are, and so is the Arts Council of Mongolia. I'm on the board of the Arts Council, and we haven't had real problems along those lines. Now, I can't speak for the other NGOs out there because I'm just not associated with them.
Because I have been also working through a lot of NGOs, I have been always facing this problem with fundraising inside of the country. And this is the major issues, tax deductions, etc. And on the other side, if it is tax deducted, then many money could go to the sort of things, but some may not go there. This is the other concern, I think, from the tax authorities.
Yeah, and there's a lot of little issues that NGOs have all the time. Early on when we started YLP and we'd have speakers volunteer to come speak at our sessions, we'd give them maybe 20,000 tugrits or something as an honorarium. And so then the tax people came and said, well, now we have to pay,
10%.
You're right. We need to pay extra money on that money. So, but those are little issues that we dealt with. Okay, fine, if that's the requirement. But it takes away from our ability to maximize the use of our money efficiently for the public good that we're trying to do. And so there is that downside that we don't have a problem in the U.S. with.
You have raised an issue of public goods, private goods, and public goods. And this is education, leadership, it's public goods. And I wish we know more about the differences in this country, across the society. You see, your total several $1 million yourself and you fundraised altogether went into this sort of noble cause in this country. It's a lot of work. Why are you doing that?
Well, first of all, when I came here in 2001, I fell in love with the country. I fell in love with the people in the country because I thought they were wonderful people and it was a wonderful place. I also felt that after that first year, my friend and I had gone down to Bangkok to do some footage and then on to Indonesia. And there's just millions and millions and millions of people down there who are poor and are working hard, but aren't going to be able to get out of that. Mongolia is a small population, and I felt that one person could make a difference because it was small enough I could kind of get my arms around. And so that was certainly an incentive to focus on Mongolia. That's part of it. The other part is I've always believed that there's like 3 stages to our life. The first stage being when we're growing up and get educated and get prepared for a career. The second stage is when you have your career and your family, and then you have the third stage of your life is when you've been successful, that you give back. You give back to the wonderful world that has supported you. And so I'm in the third stage of my life now, and I felt it was time to give back. And when I fell in love with Mongolia and felt that I could make a difference here,
you are.
I did.
You are doing.
So.
Tell us about your earlier career. You were with NASA. You have been doing programs, and you have been a very successful business and also in real estate. Please tell us about those.
Actually, I was a federal, I worked for the U.S. government for a number of years when I first got out of college. And actually the first place I went was the U.S. Navy as a civilian employee because it was better than slogging through the jungles of Vietnam. It was my way of giving to the U.S. government but not doing it in the jungle. And I worked for them for a number of years, and actually I finished working at Department of Energy, and I was managing the International Solar R&D program for the department when I left there. So I had a number of international agreements with other governments that I was responsible for programs that we were going to do jointly with the Saudis, with the Italians, with the Spanish. So a number of countries that I had agreements with. I left there in '81 when Reagan got elected. He pretty much wiped out the solar program at the Department of Energy. He wasn't a real believer in renewable energy at that time.
There is one large renewable energy national center in Colorado.
That's right.
On the highway.
I was on the selection board that created that. It used to be called the Solar Energy Research Institute. Now it's the National Renewable Energy Laboratory.
At a certain point, it was the world's largest research center.
It was. In 1980, when Reagan got elected, he cut, we had to terminate about half the staff there because the budgets got cut so much. And it took a long time for that to come back. So it was a long period where we had to make a major recovery within the federal government on renewable energy. But it did recover, and it's doing quite well now.
So after that, you switched your career.
Well, I left the government. I had to terminate a bunch of employees at the Department of Energy, and I just didn't want to do that anymore. So I left. I said, I've had enough of this. So I left and started doing some consulting locally with engineering companies, and then I eventually helped some small businesses get started that were doing engineering work, mainly IT services with the U.S. government. And eventually I started my own company doing IT services and environmental services, mainly with the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, and with a little bit back with the Navy Department and a few other large buildings in the Washington, D.C. area where we were doing telecommunication services, both IT services and telephone services within the buildings, because they're huge buildings. And so I did that for a number of years till I made enough money that, and I'm getting tired of working with the government, that I took that money and invested it in real estate, commercial real estate, and that's what I do now, so I don't have to have a bunch of employees anymore. I have some partners, and we do commercial real estate in Colorado predominantly.
Which is the largest growing city in the U.S.
Well, Denver
now.
is, that's right, absolutely. Most of my activities are up in the mountains in Summit County and then over on the western slope in Grand Junction.
Good return on investment.
Sorry?
Good return on investment.
Well, in Summit County it is, in Grand Junction it's not right now because the oil industry has tanked so much there that they've stopped a lot of the activities. It's turning around and it's going to come back. I'm comfortable.
You are sharing that, gaining with Mongolia, for the children of Mongolia, and in a larger sense for the whole country. It's so noble. Walt, I know many years you, and what you do is such a great change for the country. Thank you very much for doing that. I would like to thank you, Zurich Foundations, your colleagues for that noble job. And I think it's good food for thoughts of people who are running education system in the country, because it shows what we are missing. Thank you all.
You're welcome.
Үндэслэгчдээ өнөөдөр манай дефактоны түүхийн зочноор Zorig сангийн Америкийн нэгдсэн улс бүртгэлтэй түүний ерөнхийлөгч ноён Уолтер Женкинс оролцлоо. Их баярлалаа.